So Trump wants to get rid of Dodd-Frank and just let the investors on Wall Street do whatever they want. That's what he's saying, huh? Self-regulation? The guy can't even self-regulate his own hair. Anyways, they're talking about it a little bit, and they're saying that this is stupid. But then at the end, they point out that it might actually help them with investors. Allowing investors to do what they want might be beneficial for investors. Some investors. I've seen enough writing from enough investors that say, we need rules because they're investors. And they want easier to understand rules so that when they put their money in whatever place, they have a better chance of understanding what's actually happening to it, right? When the rules are made up, with every transaction, it's easy to get burned. But anyways, at the end he points out that, at least some investors would like to see would like to see the whole concept of regulation just ignored, right? And so I tell them, yeah, you got it at the end. It's exceedingly cynical. And while I don't dispute the claim that Trump is making making the same errors as the people he just beat, which is kind of daft. If you look at this from a kind of vulgar marxist or even gramscian perspective, then it actually makes a lot of sense. See, it all turns on the following question. Does the media cover elections, or does the media decide elections? If you take the latter perspective and you're Donald Trump right now, you have to realize that the number one problem you have in front of you is that you're not the establishment candidate. So you don't have establishment money on your side. So you don't have establishment media on your side. Now, I just want to point out that this isn't about like quantity of media. This is about quality of media, right? You could be on msnbc every day, and for an hour every morning. You could be on the morning show for an hour every day, and if what they do is they spend that time making fun of you, like is being covered by Jon Stewart, is that good media, right? So I mean, you've got. They say that all media is good media, except for when you're running for president, right? You don't want bad media when you're running for president. So what I'm getting across is not how much media he can generate. I don't think he's going to have difficulty generating media. It's a question of whether this media is going to be on his side or opposed to him. And if you think there's any sort of stark ideological alignments here, you're kind of out to lunch. Would MSNBC support Trump if it was financially beneficial to them? Sure. Would CNN support Trump if the money was on their side? Yeah, they would, right? So that's kind of what this is about, right? It's not about ensuring that there's a large, total amount of media. It's about ensuring that the media that exists is positive. He wants the coverage he gets on these mainstream, 24-hour news networks. He wants them to be positive, right? He wants all of these Clinton operatives to become his operatives. He wants all the money that they give the Clintons to come to him. And that's what he's going to identify as his major problem. He doesn't have the establishment money, so he doesn't have the establishment media. CNN could run tons of coverage on him, but expect most of it to be negative. And if you watch some of it, you'll see it already. Right? Just the way that they talk about, the way they frame things, right? The quote-unquote analysis is often hit jobs, right? And I mean, you expect that because I mean, Clinton might not have been their first choice, but she's certainly a better choice for them um, than Trump is, right? So, if that's Trump's perspective, and no doubt is, then he realizes that he's fucked. Because what decides elections is the way the media frames them, and he's on the outside. And the way you see the outcome from this perspective is obvious. Clinton, MSNBC, and CNN gang up on him and beat him into the ground, while Fox continues to spurn out punchlines for late-night TV. And Trump, no doubt, doesn't help himself either. Now, I am in some ways regurgitating the liberal media conspiracy theory that you hear on the right a lot. But let's remember that I would not call Clinton a liberal. And I would not consider the media that is generated by the Clinton / MSNBC / CNN sort of alliance. To call that liberal media would be ridiculous. You'd have to be somewhere to the right of Bismarck before that turns into liberal media, right? In fact, I would be more likely to use the term conservative media and say that Clinton has the conservative media in her pocket. What I'm getting at is that regardless of how you frame the arrangement, whether you want to call it liberal or conservative or just corporatist, it does exist. And I think that anybody that's really paying attention knows it exists. The big networks are very, very clearly on Clinton's side. They might not be liberals, she might not be a liberal, but they're on her side nonetheless, okay? Now, this does seem to contradict the narrative. They claim he won because he's the anti-establishment. But that was the primary. There's different rules in the primary, and I've been clear that I don't think that's true anyways. I don't think he won because he was the anti-establishment. I don't think he was the anti-establishment. I don't think his voters saw him as the anti-establishment, okay? And if you look at what he was saying, he didn't run as an anti-establishment candidate. He was the one that was, less ridiculous about taxes, less ridiculous about abortion. It was Cruz that ran as the anti-establishment candidate, and Trump beat him by running in the center, by coming across as less extreme. He didn't control the outside of the Republican Party. He didn't control the outsider vote. He controlled the mainstream of the Republican Party and the center of the vote. Okay, so the proper way to adjust to that is actually to go after the center and the general, which means becoming the establishment. And I would claim that he already committed to this tactic several weeks ago. That is how Trump will win, if he can win. It's almost impossible, but that's how he does it, right? So, I mean, you can argue that it's going to mean he's throwing away the Sanders vote, like it was ever serious, right? I have argued that it's his only real tactic, but it's based on the idea that he just doesn't have any space to operate on Hillary's right. It's too narrow. So, whether in recognition of that or not, it does seem that he's realizing that he doesn't really have any space to run in on her right, and instead is trying to knock her off the spot and take over and become the establishment. And of course, if he can somehow do that, then he becomes the establishment candidate and he gains the spoils. The pundits on NBC start saying nice things about him. The pundits on CNN stop questioning him. Because it's not about ideology, and it's not even really about ratings. It's about money, right? And if he gets the right people behind him, then he changes the media narrative. And then he wins, because that's what wins elections, is media narratives. Now, how exactly he thinks he's going to manage this while carrying through his other ideas is hard to parse, of course. But what it exposes is the tactical impossibility that he really faces. he's not going to win an election as an anti-establishment candidate. Okay, nobody is ever going to win the presidency as the anti-establishment. Is absurd. Okay, you win primaries like that from time to time. When situations arise, you don't win general elections like that. It's never going to happen. Okay. And he knows that. There may be some pundits that don't know that, but they probably do really know that. And here's another sort of thing to think about. Okay, you could say that, but he's gonna get the people on msnbc to all of a sudden start saying really nice things about him. All the Clinton surrogates on CNN are gonna start supporting Trump now. How does that happen, right? Well, look what happened with Megyn Kelly at Fox. Fox started off totally hostile to them, but the coverage changed as the situation unfolded, and the responses changed as well. Why is Trump up a little bit in the polling? Because he was taken in by Fox News, and he was presented to people as the establishment. Why was he doing? So all the people that Fox had worked up against him are now aligning with him because the TV changed its mind. Is that completely true? Is that the only factor? It probably has a big part of it, right? I mean, I really don't like these, kind of Gramscian ideas about, people just think whatever whatever's pushed down. I think it's an oversimplification. But I think it happens to be with Trump's voting base specifically. There's probably more to it than there would be in other voting bases, right? Because the people on the right specifically, a lot of them really are led very strongly by what they see on TV. So we saw this on the right. We saw what Fox just did. We saw the outcome. And, I mean, that's going to embolden them, right? You can say, look, it's working. Now let me go after Wall Street money, which will get me good coverage on CNN, and then I'll win them too. It's not a foolish way to think. But I think that he will run into the surprise that conservatives are a lot easier to lead than independents or centrists or liberals are. Which itself is not an accident. They've been trained that way, right? What this means is that it might seem like he's throwing away his advantage on the surface, but what he's actually really doing is cutting his losses and going in all in, right? What he's saying is, I can't win as an anti-establishment. Okay, let's take this whole thing, this whole character, let's set it off into the, down the river, and I'm going all in. I'm the banker candidate. I'm the big money candidate. Put money in my super PAC. I'm moderate on all these issues, but we'll build the wall, and etc. Right? Just throwing that all away, throwing away all this stuff that he knows is just going to hurt him, and going all in as the candidate that the establishment is willing to support. And thus it's risky, right? You could end up with nothing. But it's also high reward. It's probably the only chance he's really got. Not dumb, but definitely reflective of a lack of good options.